Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Propulsion Swimming Podcast. And like we've said on previous episodes, we are firmly into our build-up now for the World Championships in Japan in just a few weeks' time. And on this week's show, we are speaking to a member of the British swimming squad who is heading out to Japan to essentially touch upon what's been going on in Camp GB. As this week, we welcome onto the show Cam Brooker.
Yeah, as everyone knows by now, the World Championships are just around the corner, and it's time to start ramping up the hype for it. Like Scott said, we're talking to Cam Brooker this week, a swimmer who will be making his World Champs debut for Teams GB. So it's going to be great to find out what it's like to be part of the GB squad for the first time as he prepares for his first World Champs in Japan.
Yeah, this is a really insightful podcast that we've got for you guys. Cam essentially touches upon what happened at Sette Colli, the training camp beforehand, what taper feels like right now for him, and essentially how the team is looking heading into Japan. So let's have a quick listen for what's to come on this week's show.
I think that probably comes from the team aspect. You know, I think everyone in Bath gets along really well, and going through those blocks together, if I can say for one, if I had to do that by myself, there's no way I could do the training blocks like we've done this season there. I know everyone trains really hard, but they work really, really hard. And you come in some mornings, and I think one morning I remember Dino seeing the session, and he's the Olympic champion on 200 freestyle, and he goes, "This is the hardest session I've ever seen in my life." And he's there, like, you can see he's nervous. It's the difference is actually pretty phenomenal, to be honest. We get a weekly plan, and a block plan for every block of training we go into, and every week of training we go into. And on taper, we have key words at the bottom. When it comes to taper, one of them is just improve the mood state, because everyone's been battered and it's come down a little bit, and people get restless, a bit tired, a bit agitated as the training gets harder, and that's pretty natural. Everyone's only human, and you get to taper, and suddenly you're like, "Oh, hang on a second, I'm done. I've got no really hard sessions left that you turn up to in the morning. You're nervous for. You're just thinking it's smooth sailing from here."
So like we said in the intro to this podcast, on this week's show, we are welcoming Cam Brooker. Now, for those who don't know much about Cam, he is a backstroker based out of the Bath Performance Centre, training under Jamie Main and Dave McNulty. He previously spent his age group years at Wickham District, training under Kev Brooks. And at this year's British Champs, he was a very close second to sensation Ollie Morgan in the 50 and 100 metres backstroke. And we'll be going to these World Championships in a few weeks' time to race hopefully both these events and the medley relays for Team GB as well. So please welcome on to this week's Propulsion Swimming Podcast, Cam Brooker. Okay, so please welcome on to this week's podcast, World Championship swimmer this summer, Cam Brooker. Cam, thanks for joining us this week. How are things with you? I know taper started, getting a bit tired, a bit, I don't know, out. What does it feel like when taper starts, actually? Let's kick straight to that point.
Yeah, to be honest, it's just the best way to explain it, I guess, is a massive relief, because it was quite a big deal in Bath. I'm not sure how it really works everywhere else, but I'm pretty sure most people look forward to taper. It's easier sessions, less swimming. Obviously, I do enjoy swimming, I promise, but the sessions are shorter, less intense. We get more rest. We might come in later in the mornings sometimes, or get some mornings off. So I think I've dropped down from 10 to 8 sessions this week alone. So I had 10 last week, 8 this week. My main gym sessions get taken out as well. I think, the best way to describe it is it's a massive relief. I know the hard work's done. I can, as they call it in Bath, as Dave says, I can sign off with confidence and sort of just relax and not have to worry about anything, if you know what I mean. The next few weeks are sort of as fun as swim training gets, I guess. But you've obviously still got to stay focused and can't really get ahead of yourself or get carried away having more energy doing stuff. So you just got to sort of relax and stay focused, but enjoy the easier side of training.
Does the morale change at all in the team, knowing that you've just done the hard block and now suddenly I go down to 8 sessions, the intensity comes down, I don't have to be in the pool as long? Does everyone feel a lot happier?
It's the difference is actually pretty phenomenal, to be honest. We get a weekly plan, and a block plan for every block of training we go into, and every week of training we go into. And on taper, we have key words at the bottom. When it comes to taper, one of them is just improve the mood state, because everyone's been battered and it's come down a little bit, and people get restless, a bit tired, a bit agitated as training gets harder, and that's pretty natural. Everyone's only human, and you get to taper, and suddenly you're like, oh, hang on a second, I'm done. Like, I've got no really hard sessions left that you like turn up to in the morning. You're nervous for. You're just thinking it's like smooth sailing from here. So I think to begin with, it's weird because we focus a lot on this thing called adaptation in Bath, where you've done your hard work and you sort of go into a bit of a hole as your body starts to recover and you feel more tired and a bit like rubbish in the pool sometimes. But then when you come out the other side, you have a lot more energy, you're fresher, and that's where fast swimming comes. And you get a load of this easy speed and all the swimming becomes easier. And that's when the mood state really starts to like improve drastically. And I know our gym coach absolutely hates it because when you're in the water, obviously you can't go that crazy. You're sort of just in the water. You should be swimming. You can't really talk while you're doing it that much unless you're on the wall. But we're in the gym and everyone just starts to turn into like teenagers or like 10-year-olds because we've got so much energy and we're not doing anything hard. And the chat just becomes absolutely awful. But it's quite good fun, I guess, because like I said, the hard work's done and you're just enjoying yourself. But for our gym coach, I think he prefers it a lot more when we're tired and not really saying that much because then he doesn't have to put up with a load of children. But yeah, no, the mood state improves massively, and everyone just seems to be happier. I say get along better, but everyone in Bath seems to get along really well anyway. But yeah, everything just seems a lot better, to be fair.
So the whole idea of this podcast then is for us to essentially touch upon, yes, we've obviously touched upon taper starting now, but what's been happening over the last few weeks inside the British swimming camp? Because there's been a lot going on. You raced out in Italy, you went for a training camp in France. It's been a busy few weeks for you guys. So let's give a bit of an insight to everyone else.
Okay.
First of all then, how was your swims out in Rome for you, the Sette Colli? What's it like racing in that pool to start with? It was, looking at the names on paper, pretty big meet to swim at.
Yeah. It was actually an unbelievable experience. I remember, like, obviously, I've got quite an interest in swimming, so I've watched my fair few share of, like, swimming videos on YouTube, and you see, obviously, a number of them are at the Rome pool. So many world records have been broken there. I think Pearsall's 200 back was swum at the Rome pool, I believe, 151.9, which is just ridiculous, if you ask me. But, and, yeah, you see the pool on camera, and it looks cool. Italians love swimming, so there's a whole crowd. But until you get there, you don't really realise how like nice the pool is. It's just it's unbelievable. The surrounding areas, like wooded hills, and there's like the old Olympic like buildings, and there's a massive stadium nearby, a load of statues, and it's sort of dug into a little bit of a hole, but the stands sort of come out either side, and just the whole thing's so well kept. There's like gardeners and cleaners on scene all the time, sweeping up like anything that's fallen out of the trees that hang over the side. And there's like three, maybe four pools, including like a diving pit, the main pool, swim down pool. I think there may be another one. Can't really remember. But yeah, the pool itself was just, I've never seen anything like it. It's definitely like, as soon as I got there, I was like, this is my favourite pool in the world. Obviously, I haven't been to that many, but it was just crazy. And then the racing, for me personally, went quite well. I was pretty happy with it. I think 100 and 200 back were both in-season PBs. My first time under 55 and first time under 2 minutes in season. So I was really happy with that. I feel like I'm in a good position, just quite tired still and not much easy speed. But like we say, that comes with taper usually. And it was just an amazing experience to be there with, well, I can't really say in a way, with people who like I've looked up to my whole swimming life. There's people on the team who have been there since I was probably 12, 13 who've been representing Great Britain, and to like finally get there and represent Great Britain, although a number of them are my Bath teammates now and have been for a few years, it's still a very surreal experience. Not necessarily being seen as equal, but being on the same team as them, and your friends and teammates now, rather than you're a swimmer and they're like the best in Britain and you're looking up to them and seeing what they do, and you're a little bit like, oh, what can I do to be like them? So it was a really cool experience, and racing like Thomas Chekon and like a number of other really good backstrokers, like the Greek boy, I think his name's Christou, I think. I have not great pronunciation.
Yeah, that's it.
But yeah, it was an unbelievable experience. The main focus for me, I was speaking to my coach, was just holding my own and focusing on my own race when I have the fastest man in the world, like 2 or 3 lanes across from me. He's obviously probably going to go quicker than me, and he's, might be more rested than me, whatever, because we've just come off an anaerobic block. But just swimming my own race, not worrying about what he's going and what he's doing, which I think I did really well. Like I said, I had my in-season PB, so I couldn't complain, and my coach was happy with it. And I mean, the roar of the crowd when they read out an Italian name and you're stood behind the blocks is pretty terrifying. But it was good. It was a great experience, and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, probably the best competition I've ever been away to so far.
So when you say you got in-season PBs, what did you learn from those swims?
I think the main thing was I sort of executed my race as I have done in previous swims this season. But I think I learned that I'm in a better place than I have been, without like any freshness or like being shaved and tapered. I can still back it up. Like, I wasn't particularly fast going out, but I didn't die off at any point. Like, my back 100 and back 50 in the 200 and 100 were quite fast and right up there near like my PB times. So that was really good. And I think another thing I learned was like sort of being brave and believing in your training. I've had a few 200 backs this year where I haven't taken it out fast enough, and in my head I've thought, I don't want to die towards the end of the race. You need to be able to bring it back fast. So I haven't gone out quick enough, and then I've come back fairly quick, but I've been able to go out a couple of seconds faster before and come back at the same time. So it's not necessarily a trade-off. If you go out slower, you'll come back so much faster, because the first hundreds, like, you might be able to go out a couple of seconds quicker and it won't be that hard. It won't be that much harder on you, and still able to bring it back the same way. So I think, believing in my training and like thinking back to some of the sessions I've done that have been absolutely disgusting, and knowing that, a 200 back at the end of the day isn't that hard. I've done a lot harder than that. So that's the main thing, I guess, just believing in my training and knowing I'm in a good place to finish the race fast and hopefully overtake people in the last few meters, last 15 meters, if they're struggling more than I am. So that's probably the biggest thing, I guess.
You said, like, to start this podcast, the best thing about taper is that it improves morale. So is it a target of British swimming to go to meets like Sette Colli right before your taper is about to start, so that you have this confidence boost that you've got an in-season PB? You know the work's done. It's almost like you're not guessing that you're in a good place. You're in a good place going into taper. It takes the pressure off. Yeah,
I think it definitely is. If you can, back up a good race and execute it well, even if the time's not quite there, just before you started taper, I think it gives you a whole load of confidence. But I guess there is a flip side to it. If you're struggling and you don't swim well, it could have been like an effect of the hard training block you've done. So I think something we talk about a lot in Bath and joke about is not losing your head. If you don't swim well, it could be because you've trained so hard, you've put yourself in a hole, and now your body's like, I'm dead. Like, my muscles are sore. I've got nothing left, and that's not the end of the world. It's probably a good thing, because the harder you work, usually, you can overdo it, but you'll go into this hole, and the adaptations you get from it, you come out the other side like flying and way better than normal. So it's a balance, really. I think it's always a positive thing swimming fast, but if for some reason, like, for example, you're already rested and your body's recovered and you're ready to go and you're swimming fast, that's a good thing, but you might not be able to go that much quicker further down the line, if you know what I mean. So it's a weird one. I think the main thing is not losing your head, just keeping confidence and like knowing that you've done the hard work and wherever your body is at that time. Because people like go through cycles and stuff, like being recovered and being in a hole all the time, all throughout the season. So you see some people are really consistent, so it varies from person to person. So for example, Dino, who I train with, he's just seems to be able to go fast all the time, but he's a bit of a freak. So he's the one-off. But you get people like maybe Jacob Peters, who often struggles a lot in season, but he goes through taper, comes out the other side and absolutely flies. And that's the same for a number of other people at Bath. So it's great experience and it's good race practice, but you can't get ahead of yourself with how you swim. If you swim well, take it as a positive. If you don't swim well, but you've trained hard, it's not because you haven't done or prepared well. You just know it's where your body's at that time, basically.
How do you keep confidence during those hard sort of blocks then? Knowing you going into Rome, unrested, untapered, all that sort of stuff, but then you knew you had to try and put in your best effort. How do you keep that confidence high, knowing that you're not going to do your best times like you did at Champs, for example?
I think that probably comes from the team aspect. I think everyone in Bath gets along really well, and going through those blocks together, if I can say for one, if I had to do that by myself, there's no way I could do the training blocks like we've done this season there. I know everyone trains really hard, but they work really, really hard. And you come in some mornings, and I think one morning I remember Dino seeing the session, and he's the Olympic champion on 200 freestyle, and he goes, "This is the hardest session I've ever seen in my life." And he's there, like, you can see he's nervous. And I think that's an important thing, because the harder your training sessions are, the easier it seems when you come to a race. Like I said, I got behind the blocks sometimes, Sette Colli, and I thought to myself, this can't be that hard. I've done so many hard training sessions. So going into Sette Colli, I know for 3 weeks is how long usually one of our hard blocks lasts. Back to back to back every day, I've done a really hard session pretty much. We usually go one hard or one red session, as we call it, and then one relatively lighter, easier session in the training book that was leading up to Sette Colli. And I know every day, I've recovered well, and I've gone back to the pool, trained as hard as I can again, come back again, done the same day in, day out. So I know going into Sette Colli, I might be tired. I might not feel that great, but you don't always have to feel that good to swim that fast. You can surprise yourself sometimes. And going into Sette Colli, I knew I'd had a great training block, and some of the sessions we've done were so hard that it came to racing and just seemed quite simple. All I'm doing is 2 lengths of the pool, 100 backstroke. And at the end of the day, I've just got to do it as fast as I can, I guess. So yeah, I guess
swimming is so easy. Yeah,
it is so easy when you put it like that. I don't know why can't just go a world record. But yeah, no, I think when the training block's really hard, you do get a lot of confidence from it, especially if you've been training well. So taking that, you want to just take that momentum forward. And I feel like I did carry on quite well from that training block into Sette Colli. And I think a lot of people on the team I was with, the novelty of being on a GB team had sort of worn off for them a little bit. But for me, everything was new, new teammates, new kit. I've never been to Rome, I've never been to Reims. So everything was just so exciting. I think I really just was inspired by everything that was around me while I was there. So I think that helped as well. It was just an amazing experience. So yeah, I think that's part of it, I guess.
It's interesting. I think about 2 years ago, me and Dan had James Wilby on this podcast saying that this does relate to what you were saying, but he came on and said swimming is a team sport. It may look like individual times, individual outcome at the end, but it's a team sport. And what you're saying, everything you said about hard training blocks, getting through, it's the team that are keeping you going. And the squad that you have over there in Bath, I think, is probably one of the best teams in the country. Would you kind of reiterate that you wouldn't have got onto the plane at Worlds, you wouldn't have got through training blocks, you wouldn't have even enjoyed Sette Colli if you weren't part of the team?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree with that more, to be honest. At the end of the day, you're the one standing behind the blocks, but there's so many people that help get you there. And without sort of support and all those friends around you, for example, my housemates, I don't know if you know, it's me, Kieran, Brody and Jono, all really good mates and get along well. And that's just been I think a massive factor this year in performing well, because they all understand what each one of us is going through. And we can all relate with each other. And, we come in sometimes and sometimes not a word said because everyone's just absolutely knackered. But yeah, definitely agree with that from James Wilby. The team we have at Bath, I would agree, is probably one of the best teams I've ever been a part of. It's really good chemistry. Everyone gets along well. And it does make those really hard sessions just slightly easier. Because, you look over the lane and one of your best mates is struggling as well, but you're both going to go again and do a max 100 and see what you can do. And you'll fight out against each other. And, they might beat you this time, but you might get them the next time. And it just makes it does make it that little bit more easier, which you definitely need when it's as hard as it is, if that makes sense. So when we went to Australia, it's probably the hardest. We had 4 weeks out there, but 3 weeks sort of with a couple of days either side for travel were probably the hardest training I've ever done. Some of the sessions were, again, just nuts. You look at them and you'd get nervous because you know how hard it's going to be.
Have you got any
But I
examples of
think
them?
that was a critical fact. Yeah, I've got a couple actually. So we did a tolerance session, which was pretty brutal. We did so for me it was all backstroke. I did 3 100s max backstroke of 5 minutes, followed by 375s max backstroke, also of 5 minutes, and then it was supposed to be 450s at the end, still max of 5 minutes, but Dave had to shorten it because everyone was struggling so much. And that was
surprised.
you basically just I don't know if you know about tolerance. Yeah, you do your swim and then you just have to sit on the side. You're not allowed any swim down. You just have to sit there and let the lactate build, and then when the 5 minutes is up, you just have to go again. And that was I remember. I think Brody was sick. I think Jono was sick. I was sick after one of the 100s. I just ran to the side. There's a little bit of grass bit. It was literally my breakfast just came straight back up, and I just had to run back and get ready to go again. That was absolutely brutal. Or there's another one where we basically had, it's called a threshold effect session. It's supposed to have the same effect physiologically as a threshold session, but I'm pretty sure it's way harder. You basically go a little bit of aerobic, I think it might have been 100 or 200, a little bit of thresh. So that's like 30 beats below your max heart rate, which I like for like 100, maybe 100, 200 meters again. And then we had 100 VO2, which is sort of as close to max as you can get without like fully maxing it, if you know what I mean, just like a really quite hard effort. And then we did that another round, but we did 2 100s VO2 at the end, another round of 3 100s VO2 at the end, another round but 4 100s VO2 at the end, and another round of 5. And it was just like you see some of the best swimmers in the country dropping off and just literally getting into wall thinking, I can't do this. This is crazy. But then again, I think it comes into play, like the team aspect. You know, people were still going, and that inspired other people to keep going, even when you're like, I'm really struggling here. And I think one of the hardest bit is getting your head around it. You know, if you fall off in a session, it's not because you're a bad swimmer. It's because it's flipping hard. And you sit there at the start, you know, they often hand out the sheets of paper with our sets on it. Everyone sits there and you can tell if it's a really bad session because everyone's just quiet. And they're just like waiting for someone else to say something or looking around and looking at other people's expressions. And I had a fair few of those out in Australia. But it's really brutal when you're doing it. But like I said, you come out the other side with so much confidence. You've gone through it as a team. That like it was like exciting going to trials because I was thinking I've done some of the hardest sessions I've ever done here, and the whole team's been flying, and it just sort of makes you look forward to racing more because you're not thinking, oh, I'm not going to perform. You're thinking, I'm excited because I could go really fast here. I just want to see what I can go. So yeah, I guess those are two of the hardest sessions I've ever done. I'm sure there's a couple more. I remember Dino and Jimmy wrote a session because they were getting bored of doing VO2 100s, which ended up having like 1,500 meters of race pace in it. I remember it took like 2.5, 3 hours to do the session. It was so long that Jono's face, because we were in Australia, got so burnt. He had like a red hat line, like his eyes were like normal skin color, but then his whole face was so red. It was awful good. I don't think he put sun cream on that day either, so it was probably his fault. But it was really hard and just went on for ages.
So outside of training and the actual racing itself, what do you guys get up to on camp in your downtime? Is it a case of playing cards, watching telly? What do you guys do?
Yeah, I think so. On camp, especially, we get up, but like I get up, I have breakfast, and then it's pretty much straight to the pool. So there's not really much in the morning, but we get back, and I guess depending on how far into the camp you are and how tired you feel, it can vary. We often just chill out. I think when we were in Australia, we watched every episode of The In-Betweeners maybe twice. Because me, Brody, and Kieran were sharing a room, like an apartment. So that was on pretty much 24/7. But then in the evenings, like I said, like as we got more tired, I feel like we become less sociable. We try and do things. So we have like barbecues a couple of evenings where we all cook together because they love their barbecues out in Australia. And the hotel literally had barbecues like in a public area. You could go and sit, which was really cool. So we did those, played a bit of poker as well, only for like £1 or £2 or like up to like £5 at a time, depending on what you wanted to bet. That was quite good fun. So that was mainly the boys, but we had a couple of poker nights out in Australia. What else did we do? Oh yeah, usually just like playing cards, watching movies together.
Speaking of camps then, like leading into Sette Colli, the whole British swimming camp went over to Rems, which is going to be the Olympic holding camp in a year's time. So for those who are going to be selected next year, what's in store for them? What's it like over at that pool?
Yeah, I really loved Reims. The pool itself was really cool. I think it's new. If it's not, they've done a very good job at making it look like it's new, because it's like, I've never really seen a pool like it. It's like a pool in itself. The roof sort of, I don't really know how to explain it, to be honest. It's got a very like stony, metallic looking building. From the inside, it sort of looks the same. There's an outdoor, there's a couple of lanes outdoors as well. There's even a few water slides, but we weren't allowed on those. But the pool itself is really, really nice. The facilities are great. Reims itself as a place I actually have a friend who's French, and I asked her about Reims before we went. I was like, oh, what's it like as a base? She sort of said, oh, it's like Paris, but smaller. And I've never been to Paris, actually. I've never when we flew in and got the bus, but got the train there. But yeah, I think it probably was like that. It was, there's a lot of really cool buildings. There's a Notre Dame, actually, but like the Notre Dame of Reims rather than the one in Paris. Yeah, and that was really, really cool. But it was quite quiet. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you are there to swim, but it's like, so we did see a lot of people on holiday because it is the Champagne region of France, apparently. So, I mean, I guess a lot of people are there for the alcohol consumption, but unfortunately, the GB team weren't really allowed to do that. So it wasn't really our thing, but it was a really, really nice place. So many cafes, so many like nice restaurants you can go to. The hotel was really, really nice as well, which I think will host swimming. I think it was swimming, boxing, badminton. I can't remember the other few, but that hotel will be completely booked out. They said for GB athletes across like 5 different sports, it would literally just be like a Team GB hub. So I think, yeah, it's a really, really nice place. I couldn't fault it, really. It's like a good balance of quiet, but still having stuff to do, which I guess is good for athletes because you don't really want to be kept up at night by like some student club like 2 doors over. So yeah, it was really, really good. Really liked it.
So after having a little bit of a taste of that, has that now sort of changed your mindset a little bit? Is it going to hinder your focus for Worlds, knowing that, Paris is really the ultimate goal? Has it kind of changed mentality in some sort of way?
Not really. I think our coaches Jamie and Dave, right? I couldn't really fault them either. They're great. But I have Jamie as my coach, and he's sort of, without I think really noticing, but he's worked a lot with me this year on like my mindset and just focusing on myself and taking one thing at a time. So I used to overthink. I'll happily admit I overthought about like a lot of things. I used to compare myself to my old like split times in races and like, oh, why am I having more of a drop off now? Why am I doing this? And I'd overthink a lot of things, which just has a negative effect really when it comes to swimming. And Jamie's been really good at helping me focus on, what's coming up, what do I need to prepare for now, what's going on, what can I do to swim as fast as possible. And he's come out and said to our squad, and Dave's made it quite obvious, Worlds this year is just a stepping stone to next year, because obviously when it comes to swimming, the Olympics is pretty much everything. Everyone knows that. Everyone wants to be on that Olympic team. There's a reason you get rings for the Olympics as a tattoo, but not really any other competition. So it's true in that like the Worlds this year is important and it would be a great experience for me, but Paris is the goal next year and perform as well as I can there. But I mean, all I can do right now is focus on the Worlds and seeing how, if I can prepare myself as best as possible and swim as fast as possible, then that sets me up well for next year. But it doesn't, if I start thinking about Paris now, it will probably just get in the way a little bit. So if that makes sense, I guess. Just taking it one step at a time and just enjoying the first experience of being on my first team, really.
So what would a successful World Champs look like for you out in Japan? What would you like to come away with?
I think, a PB is always nice. I've been training well. I'm speaking with my coach. If I can race my own race and execute it well, I think a PB would obviously first and foremost be great. That's the plan. Get as close to that time or fast as possible. Because obviously it was a big PB for me at trials, so it's quite easy to get ahead of yourself and go, "Oh, I'm swimming really well. Another PB's coming." The PBs are easy, but I got to remember all the hard work I did just to get on this team. And how ecstatic I was with my racing at trials. And so then if for example, I went the same time or a little bit slower, it wouldn't be a massive disappointment. But I do, obviously, you want to swim as fast as possible. So a PB, firstly, would be great. Making out the heats, which a lot of the bigger guys who have a lot more experience, and our coaches say, is one of the hardest things to do at Worlds. You get people in the 400s, for example, swimming faster in the heats than they do in the final because they go all out in the heats. They get to the evening and they're probably still shattered from maxing out at 400 in the morning, and it ends up being an absolute scrap for who can get their hand on the wall first, regardless of the time. So making out the heats to the semis would be an unbelievable achievement, I think, for me. And you can also, I guess, then say, top 16 in the world. You really are racing the best people there. So that would be a great experience. I'd be really happy if I could do that. But again, if I swim a great time, but everyone else swims really a lot faster, and I don't make the semis, for example, then I won't be disappointed. I'll take it as it is, and I'm sure I'll take time to reflect with my coach. But then, I guess also there's opportunities for relays as well when you're a 100 swimmer. So if I could get on a medley relay or mixed medley relay, depending on how the times work and how the team gets put together, I think the coaches decide, and the staff really look into like the splits behind it, and other teams, they have all that information, and then they make a decision. So I think it's me and Ollie doing the 100 backstroke. And Ollie's a great guy. I didn't know him that well. I raced him a few times, but got to know him out in Reims and Sette Colli a fair bit. And he's a great guy, really focused, really great backstroker as well. So, but at the end of the day, I'm sure he'd say the same. He wants to be on the medley relay, and so do I. So I think if we both swim really fast, I guess one of us will swim the heat probably in one final, because it won't make too much of a difference. But yeah, getting on that medley relay would be an unbelievable experience, because that's probably, I guess, my best chance of making a final, because GB has a lot of history in the medley relay, and whether or not we're our strongest now doesn't really matter. All you can do is swim with who you've got and try and do as best you can. And I think they came third last year, which is really impressive. So yeah, making that final with the medley relay team would be awesome. Don't get me wrong, I want to make the final in the individual event, but I think that's probably going to take like a 52.7 or 52 high or something like that, which I'd be very happy with. But taking a 1 second drop in 100 backstroke doesn't really happen every day, so we'll see, I guess.
Well, we've just had US trials, and some of those men's backstroke swims times were absolutely insane, especially the 100, lows of 52 points there. Has Jamie come up with some sort of plan for you to reach those sort of similar heights?
I have a target sheet,
okay,
which has it was funny actually, my target sheet was before trials of 53.97, which they always set these times as fairly realistic, but quite a long reach, quite a big PB, because it's a goal time. It's like, if you swam the perfect race, this is what you're going to go. And I actually beat what was on my target time before trials, so they had to give me a new one. And that's, I think, currently sitting at a 53 low, which is I guess sort of, if I swam the perfect race, this is what we think you might be able to go, or want to go, if you have a good training, everything. Which, who knows, that might be good enough to make semis, finals. I guess another thing our coach say a lot is you can't control what other people do. You can only swim your own race. If I go to the Worlds and have a great swim, but 16 people swim a 52 point, which is unlikely, but it's not impossible. People have swum 52 point before, and I'm sure they'll continue swimming 52 or 51 again. So at the end of the day, I can just, the Americans have always been great backstrokers. I think if they were allowed to take 6 people to World, they'd probably get 6 people in the final. But that's not the rules of swimming, and only 2 per nation. So I guess that does help someone like me, who's a bit behind where some of the Americans are, but up and coming, and try and get to that point. So I guess that there's sort of a plan, but at the end of the day, again, try not to overthink it too much. I've still got to swim my race. I can't go out on my 50 back PB time and then come back with a 1 second drop. It just doesn't work like that. So there's a realistic target time in place, but it is quite a stretch, quite a reach. But if I can get anywhere near that, I'll be over the moon, and it should help me progress through the stages, maybe get to the semis. And then if I get to the semis, again, it's just who can get the hand on the wall first, try and get in top 8. I think it's top 8. It's not top 10, is it? Do you know?
No, it's top 8.
It's top 8.
Top 8 for final,
Yeah. So it's all to play for, I guess, when you get to World. You don't know how other people's approach has been either, or their building. Some people could have been ill, missed some training. Some of the top dogs could be feeling rubbish on the day, and get out touched by someone in an outside lane. It happens in swimming. So it's all to play for once you get there, I guess.
I mean, I'd love to see a British swimmer go a low 53 point and beyond. I think it's been a long time coming, and the backstroke needs it. It really does. We've spoken a lot about you, but you have a little bit of an insight into the British swimming squad and how it's going for everyone else. So what are the names that you think we should be looking out for this summer in Japan?
I'm
putting you on the spot here a bit.
It was like inside information. I'm trying to think. I think, like I said, I try not to get carried away with being on that GB team in Reims and Sette Colli and focusing on all the other great swimmers around me. But I guess a couple of standouts, Katie Shanahan and Freya Colbert. They had some great swims at Sette Colli, and I sat there and I think I watched Freya Colbert go 156 and 203, and I was just thinking, God, if I'm having a rough day, like she might beat me with that one. That's quite fast. At the end of the day, though, as well, like people from Bath, weren't racing as fast as they ever have in Sette Colli, but I think a lot of them have had a great training block and probably were in a bit of a hole by the time we got to Sette Colli. So the likes of Freya, Dino and Jimmy, they're so consistent usually and have performed before on the world stage. So I think Brody as well, I guess, he's got a great chance. He came fourth last year. He's had a really good training block. He's a great athlete and great at 200 backstroke, great at all the backstrokes really. But 200 is his speciality. He came fourth last year, and there's a couple of those big dogs, as I'd call them, are out of the picture this year. No Shane Casas in the 200 back.
Yeah, that's
although there's another American boy, Destin. He swam really well at American trials. I'm not going to pretend I don't sit there and watch the swimming because it is obviously interesting to see what other people go. But it's unfortunate, but Luke Greenbank isn't there again this year, and that's two of the people who beat Brody last year already out of the picture. So I think Brody was 157.1 at trials this year, and he was a 157.9 last year, but then went 156.1. So I guess you can't really compare this season last season because loads of other things have gone on. Behind the scenes, you don't see everything, you don't know what everyone's like in their training block, but I think Brody could do a great job, and he's proven before that he can hold his own on the world stage. The big race and the big names next to him don't get to him. I remember asking him what's it like racing Ryan Murphy because he was in the final in lane 5 next to him, and he was just like, oh, it's cool, I guess, but in the day, it's just another 200 backstroke. And he said at ISL he sort of got used to it, regularly racing all those big names. So I think he's really good at managing that and performing when he needs to. So I have to shout out Brody and say I think he's going to do a great job, and all the Bath lot, to be honest. Jacob Peters, he had a unbelievable trials, and he's tried a new thing this year where he's tried a bit of sort of power circuits to improve his power in the pool and a little bit less swimming, but it's worked. He's gone faster. And he's continued that through this block, so it could go even quicker. So any of the Bath lot, I'm so excited to watch them race. Which sounds bad because obviously I'm excited to race, but I know I'll get carried away in the stands watching them just screaming, shouting for them to go faster. But yeah, on top of that, I guess Freya and Katie, they're two standouts, I guess, from Sette Colli, and I think they obviously have massive battles with each other all the time in the pool. So I think that really drives them both on in training and in racing, so I think they'll probably do some really cool racing. I think Ollie Morgan as well. He's obviously a competitor of mine, but he's great to watch, and he is exciting because he had such an amazing trials, and he's come out of nowhere. His last year and a half has just been unbelievable. So if he can keep that going, I think that will be great to watch. But hopefully, not too fast, otherwise might be left in the dust. But we'll see, I guess. I'm trying to think who else is on the team. I feel like I've forgotten people.
I think Brody's going to be over the moon that you've given him a shout out and you've spoken to him about him for the last minute or two. And we agree. I think he's got a great chance at Worlds and potentially sneaking a podium. You never know. But the Americans are quite strong, aren't they? So, yeah, I mean, Freya and Casey are looking very good. We agree as well.
Yeah,
100%. It's quite a big team as well. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten someone. I'm sure someone will say a name to me. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, they're looking really good. But
we're not going to hold it against you.
Yeah.
Okay,
if
cool.
You miss them.
I think I guess the main thing I'm probably most excited for has got to be the men's 4x200, because every single one of those boys has looked, in my opinion, looked really good. And I think that world record will be challenged this year. I think the Americans will probably give them a run for their money, but I'm pretty patriotic and I'd like to say the British have got it. But I guess again, you don't know what's going to happen until they've raced, and it depends
Until
on the
the
day,
day.
how everyone's feeling, and how
Yeah.
they swim. So, but I think that is going to be a really, really exciting race, and I think there could be some pretty crazy splits thrown down in that race. I mean, we have three people who have split 143 in a 4x200 before, and if they end up doing that, and there's Matt as well who's swimming really well at the moment, going 144 individually. Who knows what they could absolutely smash that world record, which would be phenomenal. But yeah, just got to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cam, it's been a lot of fun talking to you. We do finish our podcast with quick fire questions, so we'll jump straight into them with what's your
No
favourite
pressure, then.
event in swimming?
Oh, it's got to be. Can it be a relay?
Yeah, we've never had that
It's
before, but go for it.
it's got to be 4x50 free or medley relay at Bucks. Like, I know it sounds
Nice.
funny, but it's not that important. But well, I absolutely love it. It's just so much fun. I end up usually doing the freestyle leg because we have with Jono who's great at backstroke, a couple of great breaststrokers like Toby, Marcos, Ollie Kettle, I think, coming through. Josh Gammon, he's doing unbelievably. He had an unbelievable fly leg on our medley relay, and I know it sounds silly, and then I did a freestyle leg. It's just a lot of fun. Definitely, relays are the most fun race you can do. It's great swimming well by yourself, but you finish the race and you look up and it's like, oh, I've done well, and that's it. If you finish the race and your team's on the podium or they've won and you've all swum really well, it's such a good feeling. Bucks is not the most important competition in the world, but it's a lot of fun. Sometimes it's fun. I guess when you have like 3 races back to back, it's pretty brutal. But yeah, but it's got to be a 4x50 medley or freestyle relay at Bucks short course.
It's
Because
that team
at
aspect
the end of
again,
the day,
isn't it?
it's definitely that team aspect. And like I think Bath last year, I dived in 4th, I think, in the freestyle or medley relay and managed to come joint 2nd. And I remember like Josh just like screaming, like give me a high five at the end, and just absolutely loving it. I think sounds bad, but I was more hyped up about like coming 2nd at Bucks with our team out of nowhere than like maybe, I don't know, getting on the podium at British Stars, which is obviously unbelievable. Like I really was really happy with that as well. But like I said, you do it as a team,
It's
and it's
different
so
energy,
much more
isn't
fun.
it?
Yeah, different energy completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's got to be that.
Who is your swimming idol?
Ooh, it's a tough one. I'm gonna have to disappoint and not say Brodie Williams, but it's probably. I mean, you can go with the easy Michael Phelps answer because he's just unbelievable. And I guess the further up you get in the sport, the more you realise how crazy it is what he did. But I think I'd probably go for Ryan Murphy, to be honest. Probably one of the best backstrokers of our generation, and he's just pretty consistent. 51 highs like every year in and out. Yeah, so it's got to be him.
Yeah.
Nice. What's your proudest moment in swimming so far?
Spoke to the boys about this the other day. Actually, it's a bit of a weird one. It's either when I got my World Championship selection letter via email. I think it was the 12th of April. I think it was 12th of April. I remember it very vividly. That was unbelievable. I think my sister actually cried when I told her. I was sort of in a bit of a shock. My sister started crying, which is quite funny. But other than that, it was unbelievable because I've never represented Great Britain before, and for me, that's been a massive goal of mine for so many years. But I guess maybe less dramatic, I guess, but winning nationals when I was 17. I'd like that week in 2019. I remember was like I broke out onto scene a little bit. A lot of people didn't know who I was, and I just wanted to like swim as well as I could. And I remember the year before that, when I was 16, was my first national final. And I think I came 8th or 9th, and I was on my PB, but like I did a big PB to get into the final. And at the time, I was like really happy. I was like, I made a national final. I'm up there with some of the fastest in the country. And then the next year, I won, and I think that's when I was sort of that moment was pretty special, I guess, because to me, winning nationals at that time was a massive deal. There's a number of people who I'm on a team with who've been winning nationals since they were 12 years old, right through all the age groups, and then making teams. But I'd never been to juniors, and that suddenly became a bit of a possibility because I wasn't too far off the consideration time. So that was pretty cool because my parents were there for that as well. And and I think I've watched the race back, which sounds pretty sad, but you can hear him shouting over the live stream, which is cool. But yeah, I think at the time as well, it was just such a big deal to me that was. I think that and making the World Championship team are probably both pretty up there, because I know like you do have to take it step by step as well. Like at the time, that was such a big deal, and obviously this year making the Worlds was such a big deal. But keeping it in perspective, I think they were both pretty. I was a bit like awestruck, if you know what I mean. It's like the hard work's actually paid off, and you've done what you wanted to do, which obviously doesn't always happen, doesn't always go as planned. But got to be those two moments, I guess.
Now, our next question is, what's the hardest set you've ever done? But I feel like we might have taken a dive into that in this podcast.
Yeah, I think one of the ones recently has got to be one of those. I think when I was back at Wickham and I was younger, I did do some pretty brutal sessions with Kev. He always used to come up with some horrific ones. I mean, I guess the longest session I've ever done was 5200s out in Tenerife when I was still like an age group swimmer. Like we did a 1K warm up, 5200s, 1K swim down. So it was 12K session, and that's sort of a different kind of hard. You know, it's just more keeping going, and the times to get quicker and quicker across like the 200s. So that was pretty brutal. But I think intensity wise, it's got to be one of the ones I mentioned earlier. Just like you sit there nervous on poolside, you get into it, and you're just like shaking in so much pain. You just got to keep going. But yeah, one of those, I guess.
Lovely. Our final question gets to know you a little bit away from the pool. If you were to go on a road trip, you can take friends, family, celebrities, anyone you want. Who would you take with you?
Oh man, my girlfriend's not really into swimming, but I feel like if I didn't say her, she'd be pretty annoyed. I guess as cool as it would be to go on a road trip with like celebrities, I guess, or people like you know, people who are in the media a lot and people you want to meet. I think it would just have to be my family, I guess. I'm going away with them in summer, and I'm really looking forward to it. Not more than Japan, obviously, but obviously when I'm swimming as well, I don't really get a chance to go like just on holiday in the middle of the year. So I often miss out with my family going somewhere. But yeah, I'd just take my family, I guess.
Nice.
Bit boring,
like
sorry, but
no.
I can't go wrong with that.
Like
That's a common answer.
Like a family car.
Yeah.
Well, Cam, thank you so much for coming on to this week's podcast. Best of luck out in Japan, and hopefully that perfect swim, that low 53 point can come. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you for the insight on British camps, because it's quite eye-opening, and I think a lot of people would like to get to know what's actually happening in the behind the scenes in these camps. So thank you very much for that. And again, I'm going to echo what Scott said. Just best of luck out in Japan, and hopefully a 53 low happens.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, before I went on any of these camps, I was also intrigued. You know, I'd never been on one, so I was like, oh, well, yeah, I wonder actually what it is like. But it was cool. Yeah, I hope I've shared some valuable insight into that. But maybe people will have more questions. I don't know. But yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Dan, a podcast where World Champs now certainly feels like in touching distance. It's so great always going into these meets to have access to the British swimmers, understand a little bit what's going on in camp. We know that Taper's on the horizon, or like Cam said, Taper is now here. They are focused on this meet. So like we appreciate every second we get with these swimmers, especially at this business end of the season.
Yeah, you could tell the excitement that he was experiencing just because he was on Taper. And I tell you what, we're not going to reflect too much because he literally spoon-fed everything. He did it. He spoke so well. And it was a great insight to what it's like to be a top athlete training for your first World Championships in the camps beforehand, what it's like team morale-wise with the hard training, and then what leads into Taper and team morale feels a little bit better. You feel a bit more confident about yourself. It was a really interesting podcast, and I think there's a lot to take away from it. I don't think we have to reflect too much here. Just listen back to what Cam had to say, I think.
Well, if you've got to this point in the podcast, if you really want to listen back again, second time through, who knows, maybe not, but
sometimes you miss things, don't you? Sometimes you miss things. So
Exactly. But essentially what I'm taking away from Cam is it's the little details that he revealed, like the training sets. Like, so people might not know this, but on this podcast, we don't actually try to go into like the depth detail of elite swimming, because actually it loses the general audience. And I think that's something that swimming suffers with a lot of the time. It becomes almost this second language that not everyone can understand. But Cam going into especially the training sets in Australia. Like, I'm sure there are several people listening who can understand the pain of the sets that he was saying, and especially the buckets outside of a pool as well. Did that bring back any memories for you, Dan? Like the lactate tolerance sessions at the end of the year?
Oh, God, yeah. You know, the classic 750s that you always talk about, or the 6100s or something like that, where you get loads of rest, but you're sitting around for about 5 minutes and you're just letting the lactic pool, and it's... Yeah, you do. You feel sick all the time. And he was saying, you know, Tom being sick, he's Olympic champion. Brody, Commonwealth champion, being sick. This is normal. And these guys put their bodies through the ringer often.
It was interesting to hear the vulnerability of these guys as well. Like, literally, Olympic champion in 200 meters freestyle, the blue ribbon event, sitting down, seeing the set and quaking, and everyone being quiet. And that is something that me, you, Jim at home, whoever, they don't get to see this. They don't know that these swimming, like, yes, when you're going through an age group session, you're terrified of some of the sets, but Olympic champions are as well.
Yeah, well, that's because they know exactly what's going to happen to them. So as you get older, you know, I know exactly how this is going to feel, and I know exactly how this is going to end up. And so I guess you fear the worst because you know the worst is about to happen to you. But it was a great insight to what it's like. And he spoke really well, and hopefully it gives people a bit of an insight to what it's like to be that high up in the swimming world.
Yeah, I'm massively excited to see what him and Ollie Morgan do this summer. Like, for a very long time, 100 backstroke in this country just hasn't quite clicked. It's been like the missing piece of that medley relay. So we're a year out now from Paris. Hopefully one of those two guys, or both of them, can keep progressing on because, we need it. British swimming really does need that event to get stronger, essentially. Yep. And it does look like it's going that way. It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so that just about rounds up this week's episode. Like we've said so many times in this reflection, brilliant insight into what is going on at British Swimming heading into Japan. Now, next week's show is going to be one of our biggest episodes of the year. Every time going into these major meets, we tend to give our previews the full beans. So if you want to sit with us for a few hours dissecting the best chances for British swimming, the most exciting prospects around the world, what world records we might possibly think, make sure you stay tuned for next week's show because it is going to be an absolute cracker. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so on Apple Podcasts, YouTube and Spotify, and you will be notified as soon as that episode goes live. And me and Dan will see you in 7 days' time as we finish previewing the World Championships in Japan.
Yes, bring your prediction hats on, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next one.
You've been listening to the Propulsion Swimming Podcast with Scott and Dan. We want to thank you for joining us and invite you to subscribe to the show, as well as checking out the Propulsion Swimming YouTube channel for weekly tutorials and videos to get your swimming fix. We will be back next week. Until then, we'll catch you on the next one.